It's the proliferation of GPT applications. GPT has just taken off within the entire industry, blown up in terms of how many new startups, how many enterprises are implementing it, and where that model sits is a concern for pretty much anyone in the space, because users are asking questions about their data or uploading CSVs, or any type of document, any PII that's within any copy and paste, proprietary code. That's all secure data that goes into or goes through some other client's infrastructure. Some companies have already put some minor policies in place about the data they put it into these prompts. Others just flat out blocking it. I'd say the entire banking industry is just flat blocking it, but they're only blocking one endpoint, or maybe two. And their last count, I think there was 873 different applications on the web or extensions that use GPT in some sort of fashion.
Hello everyone, welcome to another episode of the Security Repo Podcast. In this episode, we dive into some of the security concerns around AI. ChatGPT and other LLM or generative AI systems really took the world by storm this year. But we don't fully understand the security risks and implications that these pose. We also don't understand what we can do as individuals or organizations to actually start securing these systems. In this episode, we sit down with Jeremiah Jeschke from OfficeAutomata. Jeremiah is the founder of OfficeAutomata, a company that enables you to make smart decisions by making sense of your data. He has a history of working in cutting-edge technologies, including a long stint working with the military. And today, he's here to talk about what are the true risks of AI and what we can do to help secure and protect some of our most sensitive information. So without further ado, here's Jeremiah Jeschke and our episode on AI and security.
Whereabouts are you based at the moment? I heard you said last time that you moved around a lot.
Yeah, I've been a digital nomad for about 10 years now. Originally was from the Air Force, 6 years as a captain and another 3 as consultant. Worked on the stealth bomber, worked with combat controllers and special ops doing R&D. We had a lot of cool tech, like the one of the predecessors to the Google Glass. We had earplugs that could block out gunshots from far away. I was designing controllers for their heads-up display that would attach to their gun, to the rifle. We worked with guys that went out with the SEAL teams, and they would control the airspace above them. And they had technologies from the 80s that were helping upgrade them to the latest tech. That was a lot of fun. And then I worked on satellites and satellite control for a number of years. And then, the impetus for the product in the past was, I always saw automation coming down the line. And I always felt that if an AI was watching me do my job, it could probably do most of it. So I was like, well, if I don't do it, someone else is going to do it.
I'm just curious there. Where's the first time you saw AI in action? Do you remember the first time you saw a practical application for it?
I mean, there's been such a lot of, I'd say document scanners are probably the first ones I saw of, at least in an enterprise environment or some sort of active environment where it was doing something. So identification, not just pulling OCR data out, but building up a training set, finding places within the data that could adjudicate text strings automatically. Yeah, that's probably one of the first places.
This is a security podcast, so we talk a lot about security. Mm-hmm. The hottest subject in security right now, no doubt, is AI. I made this joke like last year in Black Hat that if you went into the vendor hall at Black Hat or these big conferences, you would just think that security is so advanced in AI. But we're really not. I don't feel like security is at the forefront of leading this. But from your perspective, as someone that is in security and on the forefront of AI technology, why is AI such a concern for security moving forward?
It's the proliferation of GPT applications. GPT has just taken off within the entire industry, blown up in terms of how many new startups, how many enterprises are implementing it, and where that model sits is a concern for pretty much anyone in the space, because users are sending asking questions about their data or uploading CSVs or any type of document, and any PII that's within any copy and paste, proprietary code. That's all secure data that goes into or goes through some other client's infrastructure. So it's not just an API; it's where it goes to the network. Even if it's OpenAI, who does have great data security policies, but so many other applications out there are just waypoints to OpenAI. They control the data
Mhm.
as a middleman. So that data is at risk everywhere. It's probably the biggest. Humans have always been the people who leak the data the most. It's always been the security threat. But they haven't had much need in the past to push data outside their own network. They've never. Yeah, I mean, there's always emails or PDFs that um, phishing attacks, but they've been not been they haven't been done by the user themselves, where the user is actually going out looking for productivity tools that can help them do their job better and faster. And now you have everyone saying they can help them.
Could part of this problem be that when we introduce a new tool, usually that tool does a specific job. And because we know how the user is going to use that. So I give the example of, there's lots of security issues with GitHub, but we know how the user is going to use GitHub, right? We know what they're going to do. But when you look at ChatGPT, they kind of came out and said, hey, we're going to do everything. And we have no idea. It's part of the problem that we just don't. It's hard to even anticipate all the different use cases for AI. Would you say that's a fair statement, or?
Oh yeah, definitely fair. What OpenAI has done recently with all the plugins has been very cool. I've seen that a lot of different demos on YouTube and LinkedIn. It does seem like there's no end to the number of use cases people will actively be using it for.
So we hear a lot from companies out there about how they're excited about AI, how they're planning on integrating it with their tools. Loom recently actually added an AI layer that creates summaries of your Loom recording that you just made, and better than I'd be able to type, to be honest with you. But you don't hear a lot about the security side. What are you hearing from the enterprises out there about their concerns in this? Is this something you're bringing up to them and they're shocked, or something they're already thinking about?
Oh yes, CISOs are definitely already thinking about this. Some companies have already put some minor policies in place about the data they put it into these prompts. Others just flat out blocking it. I'd say the entire banking industry is just flat blocking it, but they're only blocking one endpoint or maybe two. And their last count, I think there was 873 different applications on the web or extensions that use GPT in some sort of fashion.
To effectively block that, you have to block all of them. Is blocking feasible? Is it feasible to block 850 applications and have a service that does that? Is that the solution to be able to do this? Blocking them? Does that work?
Well, then you could just use a proxy or a VPN. How many seconds does that take?
Yeah. Okay. So no. So what are the other responses that companies are doing then? So if I mean, blocking it seems to be kind of the only tool that they have in the toolbox at the moment. What are some of the other more proactive companies doing about protecting their data from going into these types of systems?
I've seen a few browsers extensions that were trying to do it, but only at a. They weren't doing it very well. I checked them out. Uh, there are some DLP solutions in the market that can handle copy paste. Though that does it, but then you're all the text entry, all the drag and drops, file opens. They miss all those ones. Yeah, it's a big problem. I mean, there are multiple avenues to integrate or to interact with the browser, And then it's not just the browser; it's or the browser window itself. I downloaded a couple ChatGPT extensions that aren't in the browser; they're in the toolbar, and so that's in the Windows system. And there are a number of apps they can download that are just apps that connect to GPT natively through the desktop. And then all the different types, Windows-based, Java. You can even talk about Flash. Yeah, it's not a problem that can be solved with just blocking an endpoint.
I've heard you speak for previous podcasts, and you're writing, and you even have a whole company, OfficeAutomata. So if we have to be careful with ChatGPT and looking at automation through AI, what's the other approach? How do we solve automation if we just don't allow AI to come in and start automating things?
Oh, I think it's a carrot and a stick approach. Yes, we want companies to be using Gen AI across the board. We need security policies in place and technology to prevent data leakage. And then I think in the end, most enterprises, or even SMBs, will have their own LLM on-prem within their own cloud that's been fine-tuned with their own data, that has their own vector data store that they can link into different queries into their own files. And I mean, with vector databases, there's no into the options when it's localized and on-prem. I mean, the utility of OpenAI is limited when you're just using the input itself. It's only when you combine it with proprietary, their own client data, does it become much more powerful. And that's what I've seen when I play around with LLMs myself, is the combination of those two increases the accuracy quite a bit.
This being a security podcast, if I could summarize that a little bit. So AI is not the problem. AI in and of itself, like if you have a learning model that you're building yourself, that's secure. You're using that for its best benefit. But the problem is open models. It's the getting it outside of your network and losing control where that data is going and what people are doing with it.
Yeah. And from a security perspective, if the model's better than what users are going to outside the network, if your internal model is better, then they'll want to use that. How about the use case of writing an email in your manager's perspective or in your manager's point of view? Well, that AI could already know how your manager writes their emails, and if your assistant doing stuff for your boss, write me an email that's in my boss's language. Well, yeah, ChatGPT is not going to know that, but your on-prem one could very easily. Yeah, it's going to summarize a couple emails that your boss did and write that email out in her own language. And that you can go across the board when it has access to your own data, and that's where it's getting its information. It's much more powerful. They will want to use it more. So yeah, carrot and stick.
I'm curious about, you've mentioned a couple times about on-premise deployment of these AI tools. How feasible is that right now? Because it seems like if I want to release, I mean, so I don't know a lot about this topic myself. And I had down there, you mentioned something called vector databases. I was like, okay, that's a new term. I'll need to ask you about that later.
Sure.
But how possible is it to deploy something like this on-prem? Because I imagine that these would have to be ginormous systems, and these databases, they have to churn through so much data. So is it even feasible that we would have enough data ourselves to be able to train these systems? Where does the training data come from? How big is this system? How is it feasible to deploy on-prem?
Yes, I've done it before. It's quite feasible. So vector databases are just they're text embeddings. So if you have a block of text, it turns it into an array of floats, which is a representation of what that text contains. So that's it. It kind of what Facebook or Google do on their back end for searching through terabytes of data when you're doing some sort of search. So you would have the same sort of implementation on-prem, and those actually, because they're just text, they actually tend to be on the smaller side. You get buy with a database maybe 50 gigs less, and those would be millisecond searches because you're just looking through an array of floats. But those would do the pattern matching to bring in the relevant text for those queries. And those would be quite secure. For the models themselves, the open source space is just blowing up here in terms of how fast they're catching up with ChatGPT 4. Quite fast. They're smaller, they're faster, and just as accurate right now by at least ChatGPT 3.5 or better is what the top models are at. And from what we know from what the leak how ChatGPT 4 works, it's just I think 8 to 16 different models that are working together. So I think everyone in the space will be at GPT-4 level by the end of this year. And that kind of implementation can be put on-prem pretty easily. Get some A100s or any of the RTX models.
Really interesting, because I've had this question, I've had this discussion, because I don't know these systems intimately. I just kind of assumed that this was going to be a pretty gigantic beast, but it seems like that's feasible. But a lot of companies aren't putting that forward at the moment. And with the rise of these models like ChatGPT, it poses a very big security risk for data. I've written some articles about this, basically saying that, in my opinion, I think blocking it is the wrong choice because everyone's going to be using them. And I haven't had much of a solution until you described to me what you're actually doing at OfficeAutomata and how you're looking at solving this. Can you give the pitch of how your solution could be rolled out to actually prevent, for an enterprise, some of their sensitive information being put onto ChatGPT or other systems?
With other systems as well, we're actually talking to a number of vendors who do definitely have better PII, PCI redaction AIs than us, and we think they would be natural fits within our ecosystem. Because we came from the automation space with task mining, process mining, collecting data to figure out tasks and processes, our data collection is quite robust. So we're collecting little agents that sit on the desktop that collect the XPath, the name of the elements, class, location, application file name, all without interacting with the UI layer. It just sits in the background, watches. The user never knows it's there. So with that data set and the ability to we can also prevent things, because all the data we're collecting is also automation data. So we know, on the back end as well, how to stop something while it's happening. It's kind of like just the application data layer for every user, every application that whatever happens on the desktop. We know it, we see it, we can collect it, send it up to a PII AI real quick. Or in the future, what I think is going to happen, just a sidetrack, I think these vectors data stores are going to be critical for monitoring enterprise data as well. So contractual data, financial data, code. If you have a user trying to paste code into ChatGPT, it's a hard regex to see if something is code or not, or you can kind of see it, but is it proprietary code? I think what companies are going to have to do is have vector databases of what they consider to be secure information, and have to do checks on that information for anything that users are trying to do. If they're trying to paste a file in that contains some sort of text data that the companies identify as secure, you could do that quick check. It's not PII, it's not HIPAA, it's not PCI. It would pass through most data algorithms, except for ones that the client's already identified.
So if I understand correctly too, it's your system can sit on my machine, and if I'm pasting proprietary code that, let's say, has something easy to identify would be like the API keys or the URL of a sensitive server or something that identifies this, then if I
or a
put that in
proprietary
ChatGPT,
algorithm that you patented, or something
exactly,
patented.
yeah, then you can if I put that into ChatGPT, your system can block it and say, hey, this is not the appropriate place to be putting this, and send an alert to the security team. Is
Right.
that right?
Well, before you even pasted it, before it would catch the file before it was being dropped, if you try to type something in, it would prevent you from clicking enter. Yes, it would do all those things. And it would have
Okay.
a nice little Windows notification that quiets silently at first. Hey, we're checking this for you before you click enter. And then a loud notification. Hey, that's proprietary. Fix that, please.
It's really interesting because I'm an absolute firm believer that blocking this stuff doesn't work because it just sends it underground. And this was the first time I heard a solution that was kind of like, oh, this could actually be used in an effective way whilst also allowing ChatGPT to be used for things that aren't sensitive, that will enable people to be productive and prevent them from going to the back end. I just thought that was for the first time when you gave me that pitch, I was like, oh, I can actually see this. And now I have an answer for all the people that says, hey, well, what do we do? I was like, well, I don't know. But now I have something, right?
And some of these AIs, or some of the vendors that we're talking to, actually have very cool AIs to automatically redact information. So if PII is being found within like a copy paste or text in a copy, you could get the data back and it'd be automatically redacted of any of that data. 73, 75 different fields of data that they've trained these AIs on. So the user wouldn't even have to actually worry about it. They could just copy and paste, and they're like, "Oh, yeah, it wouldn't matter." I mean, it wouldn't interrupt their workflow at all.
So one of my favorite things you said recently in an article is that you really see AI playing into both kinds of innovation, two types of innovation. There's probably more than two, but sustained innovation and disruptive innovation. I wonder if you could just expand on that just a little bit for us here, like how you see OfficeAutomata. Like, is that a sustained innovation play, or are you really trying to disrupt what's going on?
I think it's both. Within the RPA space, there are robotic process automation. I think that's more in the sustained space where companies are looking for, but they have lots of legacy systems that don't play nice together. That also have security concerns there. But that's more of just a sustained innovation play. Gen AI is definitely on the disruptive side. That's actively disrupting industries all over the place right now. So the automation space is interesting and fun, but generative AI is even disrupting the automation space as it's evolving. There's a few cool automation platforms out there that just type what you want to do in, and it'll go off and either build those automations or just do it for you. I think those are also security threats. If you have a Gen AI working in the background, just doing it, and it creates a PowerShell script or some sort of command line script, well, that will need to be checked as well, won't it?
Yeah, that's one of the concerns that always pops up when people start talking about should we deploy this, and it was ChatGPT written. I forget who said it, but back at DevSecCon or DevSec Day at RSA, I have to go look and check my notes, but it said, would I trust ChatGPT code to run in production? And she said, if it passes all the same tests that a human developer would have to pass, then why not? Why wouldn't I put it in there? But would I just throw it in production? Absolutely not. No one should do that, no matter how the code got produced. And I think that just generally applies if we're talking ChatGPT or any other technology.
Or any human, to be honest. Like,
some of these platforms are giving that control to the users to build those automations on the fly. Well, yeah, either they're running PowerShell or Python scripts in the back end to do that at the same time. That's another security threat. I'm not sure that's being checked right now.
it's interesting. I can see your brain kind of going, "Oh, we've just got a new angle."
I know a few Silicon Valley companies that's their thing. raw code running on the user's desktop.
Right.
Not good.
One of the things that I really like about talking to you is that from a security perspective, from a security perspective, uh, you're really excited about AI as well. And when I chat to other security folks or just in my circle, AI is this kind of scary thing that's disrupting so much and making everyone's life hard that they're not really enjoying it. So I wanted to ask you,
Mhm.
because you look at it so positively, what is one of the things that most excite you about the possibility of AI? What really kind of gets you going when you're thinking about where we might be with these models, with these systems in a few years?
The speed of development. I've never seen the open source community be like this. In the past, I'd say it was definitely when the Llama model from Facebook was leaked, and we actually got to peek under the hood at some of these better models. Then everything blew up. New libraries were coming out every day. Multiple new libraries were coming out every day, Python or natively. New models are still being released every day and updated every day. The speed, how fast the inference is going, or how small they're getting, and how powerful they're getting. Um, so when people start talking about AGI in the future, it starts looking a little bit more realistic. So yeah, seeing the future happen in real time it's pretty exciting.
Yeah. Happening quickly too, concerningly quickly. I,
Yeah.
I, one of the things that makes me laugh is that I'm heading off to Black Hat, a big security conference coming up in a few weeks. And last year, I wrote an article basically shaming the security industry of like abusing the word AI, and that like the closest thing that we had to AI at that point was like Copilot, and I wasn't particularly very impressed with it. And I really
Mhm.
just AI was like this distant thing that every banner was kind of advertising. And then like 4 months later, like OpenAI comes out with these crazy products, and I was like, holy crap! I never would have thought in 1 year we would get from point A to point F so bloody quickly, and there's so
Yep.
much longer to go. So, yeah, it is pretty cool to see it happening. It's concerning, but I think if you're at the forefront and you're running with it, then it's exciting.
Mhm.
Hey, so
Yeah.
as we're starting to wrap things up here, I didn't mean to cut you off. You have comment on that.
Nope. Don't go ahead. Sorry.
Well, as we're starting to wrap things up here, thanks again for being a guest today. We always like to ask our guest a couple questions, uh, and we've had some really wild answers out there. But we're always like to ask, what's the worst security advice that you've ever received or given? And then what's the best security advice? But let's start with the worst because that's always the most interesting, in our opinion.
Sure. The best security advice I think I've ever been given, at least from the coding perspective, is not to store any passwords or API keys in plain text anywhere on your system. Always try to have that locked up somewhere. But that's not from just like a business user perspective, but just from a programmer. Yeah, that's try to protect those. Um,
You're
You
speaking my
really are.
language. This is what I'm all about. So I appreciate that. Oh, yeah. No, that's great. Well, we've come to the end of the episode. It was really insightful. I always just like to ask before we close off if our listeners here want to kind of follow your journey or the journey of Office Automate, what's the best place that they can do? Are you active on social medias? Do you have a blog? Where can they kind of follow your journey and see what where you're going in this new innovation that you're coming out with?
yeah, absolutely. We're talking with a lot of consultants and tech vendors in the space to help deploy this to their systems and integrate their AIs. We can follow us at OfficeAutomata.com, and our blog and email links are there.
Fantastic. Well, Jeremiah, I want to say thank you one last time. Dwayne, any closing words for you before we click the big red button?
No, just want to say thanks again for being on the show. As the world changes, and well, I guess I do have something to say. As the world changes and AI keeps progressing, and more security risks keep popping up, really, really grateful that there's folks like you out in the community who are paying very close attention and directing enterprises to better practices. So, thanks again.
Thank you. Appreciate it.